Hey guys! So today's video is going to be another disability discourse, and today's topic is a little more serious than some others, and that is being accused of faking your illness or disability. Something that really surprised me when I initially became disabled was that people would accuse me of faking, and it was probably one of the worst, if not the worst experience that I had was during high school, right after my diagnosis. I was accused of faking a lot because I don't look sick, all the usual stuff. And it brings up all of these horrible feelings that you don't know how to deal with really as like a newly disabled person. And it's just a really terrible soul-crushing experience. And something else that surprised me as I talked to more disabled people and got more involved in the disabled community is that this is basically a universal experience. I've never spoken to a disabled person who hasn't at some point been accused of faking their illness, whether they have an invisible illness like I do and are accused of outright making the whole thing up, or whether you have a more visible illness and you're still accused of like over dramatizing or making a big deal out of it. It just seems to be this inescapable part of being disabled, and that sucks. So really today I don't want to talk to the accusers. Like, this video is not for them. I think if you're that lacking in empathy and you're that non-understanding of a person, there's not much point talking to that type of person. I don't see how having a conversation with them will change anything. But what I do want to talk about and who I do want to talk to is I want to talk to the people who are being accused. So whether you're a newly disabled person who's just going through this for the first time, or whether it's just coming up again in your life, it seems to come in waves. I don't know if like that's just me, but I feel like there'll be times when everything's like totally fine and everyone's really nice about everything, and then there'll just be like a month or so when all these weird things come up and people start making weird accusations. I don't know. Basically, I just want to talk to you about the feelings that it brings up and let you know that you're not alone with those feelings. They're completely valid, you're completely valid, and you don't have to feel like you're dealing with this alone, because I know I did, and like I said, it was one of the hardest parts of my disability was dealing with those feelings. So, let's get into it. So the first feeling that I think gets brought up with these accusations is it feels like everyone thinks this about you. And especially when you're younger, like I remember being in high school and one person would accuse me of faking my illness or like say behind my back that I wasn't really sick. And for years actually, I felt like I couldn't tell people that I had a disability because I thought that everyone would just think that and like not necessarily say it to my face, but that if I said, oh yeah, I have arthritis, they'd just be like, you're right, and then just not believe me. This isn't the case. Like, I don't know how else to tell you this, but not everyone thinks that. These people are few and far between. The people who automatically assume that everyone is lying about everything, they're not that many. It's not a majority. It's a very, very small minority. I think it's easiest to think of it in the terms of insults and compliments. So I think we all know that we tend to take insults to heart much more. Like, you hear compliments and you're like, yeah, whatever, no, that's not really true, like, it's not true. And then someone insults you and you're like, yes, that's absolutely correct, and I will remember that for the rest of my life. And it's the same with support versus accusations, right? Like, there are a whole lot of people who support you and love you and of course believe you, but it's so easy to forget about that when one person accuses you of faking. Like, it's amazing how the brain works. So my advice for this is, especially if you're young, it's not the end of the world. That person is really just a douchebag and they're not representative at all of the other people that you know now, nor of the other people that you will meet in the rest of your life. The second feeling I think is one of the hardest to deal with, and that is that accusations of faking really can make you question yourself and your own integrity. And I know this probably sounds really crazy to people who don't have chronic illnesses or disabilities, because it's like, but if you have it, then you know you have it, right? And I don't think, like, obviously when people accuse me of faking, I was never like, do I have a diagnosis? Because of course I do. But what it makes you question is if you could be trying harder. It feels like the whole world thinks that you should be doing more and doing better. And when you feel that way, it's easy to think, well, what do I know? Like, if everyone thinks that I could be doing better, surely I should be doing better. It just makes you question your the effort that you put in. So of course you don't question your diagnosis. obviously, but it can really make you question if you should be doing more, even if it would be physically impossible, and often is physically impossible for you to be doing more than you already are, or trying harder. It's way too easy to just be like, well, this random person thinks that I could be trying harder. Why aren't I trying harder? So with this, I just want to remind you that you are the only person in the world who knows what your specific condition is like and what it's like living with it on a daily basis. If you're lucky, you have a specialist and hopefully a GP who at least somewhat understand the technicalities of it, but they don't live with it every day. Even they don't know what it's like on a daily basis. If you're really lucky, you probably have a support system who also do their best to understand, but they also don't live with it every day. Even other people with the same diagnosis as you, they don't know what your version is like. You're the only person who knows exactly what your experience is like, and you're the only person who ever can know that. So while it's important to be honest with yourself about your ability and like what you can do, you should never take someone else's word for what you can and can't be doing. Like, what someone else thinks that you can or should be doing or should be able to do has absolutely no bearing on reality or what you actually can do. You're the only person who can ever know what you can do. And it's all very well and good for people to say, oh, you should be doing more. But here's the thing. Acquaintances and like not super close friends, which most of these accusers are not, don't see you at your worst. Of course they don't. When you go out and spend time with people, you have on like your face, your like outside face, you're not just gonna break down crying. Also, chances are that it's a good day, because otherwise you probably wouldn't have agreed to go out. Like, there's all these factors that mean that these people only really see you at your best. They don't see the other times. They don't see you struggling to get out of bed. They don't see you having to like lean on walls to get around the house, you know, like they don't see that. So, sorry, I'm getting like mad. They don't see that, so they can't possibly know. Only you. I cannot stress this enough. I know I'm just repeating myself, but only you know what your condition is like and how it affects you on a daily basis. And you need to trust that you know that about yourself, because you're the only one that you can trust to know it. The next thing is that it's way too easy to keep these people around. Even after they've accused you of faking your illness, I think, in fact, sometimes because of it, because of all these negative feelings that it brings up, it's very easy to think, well, I don't deserve someone's friendship, and it's so hard for me to make friends because like I have all this self-doubt and I should be trying harder and all those kinds of things. So I'll just keep this friendship or relationship because I can't afford to lose any friends. The thing is, you're not breaking off the friendship or relationship. They broke that off when they decided to accuse you of faking your illness in a really hurtful and harmful way. So that's number one. Number two is you're not really losing anything, because anyone who would do that to you is not a real friend. Anyone who would do that to you doesn't really care about you. So it's not a loss if you cut them out, it's a gain. And I guess what I want to say about this is, I know it's really easy to think, especially in the throes of being accused of faking your illness, where you're having all these feelings of self-loathing and self-doubt, it's really easy to think that you won't make other friends and that no one will ever understand. But they will. Like, you don't have to settle for someone who treats you badly. You don't have to accept that in a friendship. There are so many people out there who will understand and who would never even cross their mind to try and make you feel bad or feel guilty like that. Like, there are so many great people out there. It just takes time to cultivate that support circle who is right for you and you're right for them. So give it time. You will find way better people. Number 4 is that it can feel really isolating. I mentioned before that when I was younger, after being accused of faking my illness in high school, there were quite a few years when I didn't disclose any of my medical information to people. And because having a chronic illness or a disability is a pretty big part of like a disabled person's life, like it affects everything that I do, it's very hard to form close friendships or close relationships without disclosing that, because it's a lot of who I am. It's a lot of like my everyday activities are affected by it. So it can really make you feel like it's just you, and you're not allowed to tell anyone, and if you do, they won't like you, so you have to keep this kind of wall up between you and other people. I can't tell you a quick fix for that, because like I said, it took me years to get back to being able to just tell people and letting them think whatever they want. What I can say is what I've said before in this video, which is it's not the majority of people who will just assume that you're lying. It's a very small minority, and honestly, who cares what they think? Like, it says a lot more about them that they're assuming that everyone else is lying about things. Like, to me, that says a lot more about the person making the accusations than the person being accused, because if you think that someone just like makes this really elaborate, like really in-depth lie about having a chronic illness for like years and years and years, that says more about you and what you would think of doing than it does about the person being accused. So just try not to isolate yourself. People aren't all bad. Like, yes, it's a really horrible experience to be accused of faking things. It won't happen with everyone. You are allowed to disclose your medical status as you want to. Like, it sounds empty because I know how scary it is and how bad it feels and how like you just like retreat into yourself after it happens, but I just want you to not feel alone with it. Like, even if you're just talking to other disabled people online, like find a way to vent your feelings and to at least have some people around you who know what's going on with you, because isolation is dangerous and just not a nice feeling. And finally, I just want to have a chat about kind of trying to break down these misconceptions in general. So obviously this is a really common experience. Like, a lot of people get accused of faking their disabilities. You know what doesn't happen that often? People faking illnesses and disabilities. It really doesn't happen that often, but the problem is that when it does happen, it gets like reported all over the media. It's like someone faked having cancer and then were just awful people and took a whole lot of money. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, it gets a whole lot of publicity, and so people will remember that and people will take that with them, and then when they hear of someone actually having cancer, they're like, what if it's fake? Because that happens all the time, am I right? Like, people fake cancer way more than people actually have real cancer. Anyway, so obviously this happens quite a lot, and I think something that's really important is to call people out on it when you hear, like, if you're just having a conversation with someone and they mention, like, for example, about the cancer thing, like, say there's an article online that your friend or coworker or someone read and it was about someone who had cancer, and they mention, like, offhand, oh, well, they could just be faking. Like, call that out. You're allowed to call that out, and it's good to, because it challenges this idea that people seem to have that faking illnesses is really common. And hopefully, hopefully that person will then go on and think and maybe not accuse a real life person, like not on an article, of faking. Like, perhaps it'll make a difference. I don't know. I try to call people out on it when I can, just because, like I said, I hope that maybe they'll go away and think about that, and maybe it'll make a difference. Maybe like it'll be one less person who like piles onto some poor sick person saying that they're faking things. Anyway, I think it's important to have these conversations openly. I think it's important to let people know that this is not, it's not like this epidemic of people faking being sick. That's not a thing. Like, it barely happens. And I think that's important to talk about. I think you're well within your rights to like just tell someone, hey, like, it's not that common. Like, it really isn't. I think the default position should be that you believe someone who tells you that they have a disability until proven otherwise. Like, innocent until proven guilty, right? So yeah, there's that. Okay guys, so that is it for this video. I didn't say nearly all the things that I wanted to say about being accused of faking your illness, but I feel like I didn't want to get super angry and ranty, and also I have a tendency to like go way off topic, which I did in this video anyway. I'm really sorry. I hope that at least it made some sense to you and that you can kind of resonate with some of the things that I said. If you have any other thoughts or feelings about this, as always, please leave them in the comments below. I will do my best to get back to you. I always love hearing about your own experiences and your feelings about these things, so please let me know. And apart from that, I will catch you in the next, hopefully more positive video.